Hello, this is Greg Allison Green Gregs. I have a special guest today, James Penato. And the topic today is on the cities across America are starting to push some new Green Deal type agendas, and some of them are rather radical. I mean, they're talking about going 80% fossil free by 2030. That's less than 7 years, guys. How are they going to do it? They're going to shut down all the gas stations to make this happen? Well, this is starting in El Paso. This is one of the first test cases. And James Penato is at the forefront, the tip of the spear, at trying to stop these type of agendas. And there's also an agenda to make it a lot easier for them to put propositions on the to the boards of these cities to try to push through all kind of stuff, because a lot of these people are community organizers and they have a lot of time. A lot of us that work professional lives just don't have time to deal with. So we're trying to make it a little bit harder, so they got to be more serious about things they push before these cities. And what you might want to bear in mind, my friends, is that this city type initiative, this is their way of trying to get in the back doors, because they know that urban populations are more amenable to these type of controls, and sometimes they don't think through what it means. But having no gas available in just 7 years is going to be rough. There's some issues with like electric cars. And even if it's just in certain cities, just driving, how do you even drive through them, guys? You've got to stop and get gas. So here's a good test case for what can come up and how to deal with it. So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to introduce you James Penato. James, tell us about this.
Greg, thanks for having me. And yes, so we're in El Paso, Texas, which is in far west Texas, and we're just combating a local, I would say, far left radical organization, and that's nationally or even internationally funded by radicals abroad, who are trying to impose what is essentially the Green New Deal at the local level. And just like the Green New Deal that everyone knows that they push in DC, this comes with very draconian measures targeted at the oil and gas industry, and also includes a lot of critical race theory, equity measures for, when they call it anything, if they call it social justice, or in this case they call it climate justice, whenever you hyphenate justice, it's usually anything but. And so it's just a mixed bag of equity, postmodern nonsense, and draconian measures that would kill businesses, have a lot of businesses flee from El Paso, discourage investment in the city, and we would certainly lose thousands of jobs. And I could go on. Do you want me to just lay out what the Prop K is all about?
Yeah, just tell us about Prop K. Oh, by the way, we're live, and for those that are joining us in the chat room, we'll have some time for some Q&A about what he's showing us after he lays it out and tells us what it is. So go ahead, James.
Okay, sir. So I'll share my screen like we discussed, and so share. So if you guys see here is our website for elections, and here's a sample ballot for the city of El Paso. And there's 11 propositions on the ballot that they're changing. These are proposed changes to our local city charter. And Proposition K is the last one, and it's huge. So all these other measures are short, with like 3 sentences, 4 sentences, 1 sentence long. And then Prop K is a giant piece that the citizens of El Paso, far left radicals, managed to get on the ballot through petition. So instead of, like, I guess, a climate plan that was created with stakeholders across the El Paso, multiple stakeholders. This is all drafted by Sunrise El Paso and the Sunrise Movement nationally, and it's just all this gobbledygook, and this is not even the language that would go into our city charter, but it summarizes it all right here. And it starts off with creating a climate department, which would be composed of a climate director who would answer to our local city manager. And then he would have under him these climate bureaucrats that are members who are like assigned to each of the 8 city districts in El Paso. And so these 8 climate bureaucrats with the climate director would make the administrative leadership of a new climate department in El Paso. It states in the fine print that the climate bureaucrats cannot have a background in the oil and gas industry. They have to come from, I guess, climate alarmist background to even qualify for these positions. And then it has a mandate to pursue climate justice, to replace all the vehicles that the city owns to operate with electric vehicles, even though many of our buses and other work vehicles are powered by, if not gasoline, natural gas, which is a relatively very clean form of carbon energy. And then it also talks about purchasing our local electric company, El Paso Electric, which is an $8 billion corporation. And it bans the sale of water to businesses that deal with oil and gas outside of city limits. And all of this language, we take it at face value, not just like the people who are trying to sell Prop K on our community are saying that, oh, we would never go extreme with this. But if we take this language as, what it could eventually mean, because they do put in the language, like, by any means necessary or by all means possible, it has very strong language in here. They could ban sale of water to a gas station just out of city limits. They could ban water to somebody who makes plastics outside of, or like manufacturers with plastics, because so many things are tied into oil and gas. Agriculture just outside the city limits is very tied to the price of gas, and people use a lot of oil and gas to get produce, meat, and dairy to your grocery store to get to your table. So the implications of Prop K are enormous and should be taken very seriously, and so we do. So here's all the language, and we've been pushing people door to door and through other means on social media to vote against Prop K. And then the language that would go into the charter, it's about 8 pages long, and it goes into like definitions about things that have less to do with climatology and more to do with equity. So they'll talk about climate justice, and they're just sneaking into, at the city level, concepts like ESG scores and stuff like that. So if you have a politically incorrect business, you will not be served justice by your local government in El Paso if Prop K passes. So that's Prop K.
Wow. So when they talk the justice stuff, you need to turn your speaker down a little bit. We're getting feedback. When they talk justice, social justice, and these things like that, they're in equity. They're talking about redistribution. This is actually a program to redistribute money as they see fit according to their own agendas, which is just taking money out of the pockets of the middle class and pushing around. It's just more of that kind of stuff. So you can think higher taxes in addition to all this other stuff. So you're probably going to see higher taxes. You're going to see a lot of businesses getting shut down. If you really want to be green, this ain't the way to do it. This is more about control than anything else. And that's what I often teach people in my channel when I talk about. My title is Green Gregs. I'm green. See, I'm wearing green even.
Sure. No, I mean, what I've been telling voters in my conversations with people, and I wear like this sticker on my shirt because it's been helpful in initiating conversations with people throughout the community. But I tell people that if you were serious about the climate and you wanted to do something about it, because indeed it is virtuous to care about our planet and our environment, that's a good thing. But I think it's very lazy to attack it by just passing draconian laws that will harm people for sure. It's a very lazy hammer solution to a problem, and I would respect somebody more if they told me they care about the climate, so they got into the study of science, engineering, and business so that they could provide marketable solutions to the problems they are concerned about. It takes a lot more discipline to study science, math, physics, chemistry, and engineering, studying and business too. That all requires a lot more discipline, but I think we should take more seriously people who've done so, because those are people that are coming up with real solutions. There's that young man out of Scandinavia. When he was a teenager, he had developed a way to collect garbage in the oceans by studying the ocean's waves, fluid dynamics, and he studied engineering, and he had devised a piece of technology that could float atop the ocean surface, and it would just collect garbage in the ocean that would, and it'd be cost effective to gather it all up and pick it up. Or another example is Elon Musk, who, I would maybe give a little bit of minor criticism that he's known to have taken a lot of subsidies, but once upon a time, Teslas were an exotic electric vehicle that you might see if you were in Los Angeles or San Francisco. And now we're seeing them everywhere on the streets of El Paso. And we're not a very, high median income city. So when you start to see electric vehicles like Teslas going mainstream on the streets of El Paso, that's the sort of, success in pursuing, a solution to a problem that we should all glorify, and we should encourage these young activists who are very radical to instead pursue those kind of things. That's the way to do it, to show concern for your environment.
Well, one thing I've done, I've actually come up with a habitat concept for a home that you can live in, make a living out of, grow all your food in, even that, or it's close to that. But I'm trying to do it in a very small, concise package of like 1/10 of an acre. That is just amazing if people move to things like that. But I don't want to force anybody to do anything, including living in my house. I would never tell anybody, you got to do this. I want to make my concept so attractive that that's all anybody would want to do. That we've got to come up with, instead of ramming everything down everybody's throat and trying to control their lives, we need to have freedom as the basis for all these kind of things. And I think that can be done. I don't think this force everybody to do this, that, and the other, cut off, shut down all the fuel is the right answer. And 7 years from now, to have less than 7 years from now, to have an agenda where you have 80% reduction in the fossil fuels is radical. And furthermore, they want to have 100% by what, 2045?
Yes, sir. By 2045, their goal is to be 100% on clean energy, which they define at the beginning of their charter language with a bunch of definitions. They have definitions for climate change, jobs, climate justice. That's garbage. They define clean energy as definitely not being allowed to use carbon fuels. But then they also does not include hydrogen energy produced using natural gas, blue or gray, or they're also opposed to nuclear. So they consider nuclear to not be part of the accepted forms of energy, which really just leaves you with, solar and wind and maybe hydroelectric. Yep, they list them: solar, wind, hydroelectric, or geothermal. And it's just, the technology is not there. The mineral resources are extremely hard to come by. So that's not really there. The cost to implement all this stuff from a, government level mandate that we do this is extremely costly. We should inspire our fellow citizens to choose liberty, and glorify or give praise, shower praise upon people like yourself, who are doing this at their home level. Have you ever heard of earthships,
Oh yeah,
sir?
my universal habitat is kind of like a Earthship on steroids. It goes
Nice.
enables you to grow all your food within it instead of having just a little greenhouse in the front. It's about being able to produce stuff. So one of
Yeah.
my mods in the chat room, New Days Old Ways, posted a link to a video that I did, which really encapsulates this, and it's called The Great Fix. And that video is not having enough people watching it, so I encourage everybody to see her entry here for the Great Fix video. But mainly in that video, my main theme was self-reliance, and that's where be self-reliant. What they want us to do is be totally dependent, totally reliant. They want to take everything away from you and make you totally sucked into the hive they're trying to set up. And what better place to do that than a lot of these cities? That's where they're trying to come from. And of course, this would metastasize from the cities out, and so the whole states and would be in this. I mean, this is starting in an oil producing state. Texas is an oil state. To have this kind of thing coming up in an oil state is it just underscores what they're trying to do and the breadth of it. So if you think you're immune to what they're doing, you're not. And this is why we got to pay attention to local politics too. I talk about a lot of stuff on the national level and here, international level, but the local, it's like Tip O'Neill. He was the Democrat Speaker of the House. He used to say, all politics are local. And that's where the rubber meets the road is at the local level. That's where it starts. And so we have to pay a lot of attention to local politics. And they knew this in the UN when they set up the 21 agenda. I got to be careful how I say these things. I don't want to trigger the Al Gore who has no rhythms. Sure. And and I want to make sure that we realize that also the 2030 agenda, also from the UN, what they did is they set up partner cities. They set up a lot of cities because they knew to push these deals, they need to do it through the populations that are more amenable to what they're trying to do. To see this coming up again in a oil state like Texas is kind of mind-boggling. And like you said, El Paso is not the biggest city in the world. It's a rather small city. It's a poor city overall, and to see that there is kind of shocking. But that's how they want to roll. So, guys, this is kind of a sign of what's to come. This is a sign of what we got to watch out for, to sneak up on you. It'll be in your backyard before you know it if you're not paying attention. So, and they've got other agendas like Prop. That's Prop K. There's a Prop F. So tell us about Prop F.
Yes, sir. I thought this would certainly be also of importance for your listeners to know about Prop F. So the way Prop K got on the ballot was a local organization here in El Paso called Sunrise Movement, which is a nationwide organization funded by organizations at the national level that like include people like George Soros among them, who donate to these foundations that fund the Sunrise Movement. And there are Sunrise chapters all over the country. So there's a Sunrise Austin, Sunrise San Antonio, or Tucson, Albuquerque. And the Sunrise El Paso people, they got organized. They looked at our local city charter, and they found where they can petition people to support their proposed climate agenda. And if they get enough signatures, and it varies city to city, but many cities or municipalities will have such a measure. In El Paso, they only needed to get 5% of the people who voted in the last general election to sign their petition within 120 days. They met that requirement. They took it to city council, and the city, I'm not sure. I don't get a straight answer on that from my city clerk or city reps, but they did not veto that, so that it went straight to the ballot. So now the entire community is faced with a very consequential issue that puts us at risk. But it's this petition process that they're finding a lot of success because it's a lot cheaper to make change at the local level through direct petitioning and referendum than to get a broad enough coalition to get a city council elected, let alone a majority on city council to support their radical agenda. So, we have 8 city council reps and the mayor. It's a lot cheaper to just do a direct referendum through petition ballot rather than getting a majority of city council to support their radical agenda. And Prop F lowers the threshold necessary to get things on the agenda via petition, get things on the ballot via petition. So they're going to, rather than, okay, so what's harder about it is it'll go down from 120 to 90 days, but they will no longer. So let's say these radical folks, Sunrise, El Paso, they're what they're going after now is they want local campaign finance reform and government funded elections at the local level. So it's a socialist concept that puts severe restrictions on freedom of speech and limitations to how much you can donate to the candidate of your choice. So yeah, it severely hampers free speech at the local level, and they're doing the petition process for that. They have to get 5% of the registered voters who voted in the last election to sign their petition. They take it to city council. City council can review it, and then they can vote to either approve it, and then that goes on the ballot, or city council has the option to veto that proposal, because let's say the majority of city council thinks that would be harmful, or city council knows that what they're asking or proposing to do is it's not feasible and it'll cause a bunch of headaches, maybe lawsuits between the city of El Paso and the state of Texas. So currently city council has the option to veto a petition that they deem not feasible or good for the community. And Prop F proposes to remove that ability for city council to veto. And if city council vetoes, the citizens can go back to the community. If their proposal gets vetoed by city council, they get 120 more days to go get the same number of signatures again. And yes, that is an inconvenience. Yes, it can get rather hot, and it is hard work to mobilize and get signatures for your petition. But it's still all a lot easier than getting a majority of people representing your viewpoint on city council. So it's still a lot easier to do this, but they want to not have to go back out a second time if city council disagrees. So they want to remove the city council's veto. And so I just thought that's something that your audience might want to be aware of is the left is very organized, they're very motivated, they're well funded, and they're able to identify key points in your local charter that they can use in their to their advantage to move their agenda along. So your audience should definitely be aware of these things, and if not, we'll take advantage of these same things as well. If you're able to get organized to petition local government to restrict government authority and empower individual freedom even more, go for it. But be aware that it's a double-edged sword, and I always find that the left is more energized and they get mobilized better than our side does more often. So that's why I'm against this, lowering the threshold requirement to petition local government and circumvent city council.
There you go. Things seem more fair, and quite frankly, they got an advantage of certain billionaires who've thrown a lot of money at them and setting up these so-called community organizers and organizations, and there's a whole boatload of them. And this is all they do. They sit around and come up with ways to basically circumvent our freedoms. I got no issues with green energy, but don't cram it down my throat. It needs to be attractive. It needs to be something that makes sense, something that works. You don't just shut all the fuel down and expect you're not going to have problems. You don't just shut things off like that. It's going to cause great problems to do that. And frankly, I've got quite a number of gas guzzling vehicles and a diesel, couple of diesel bus and a diesel tractor. And, I've got no intention of giving any of that stuff up soon. Another thing, as it is, even electric cars, like you said, and somebody's mentioned in the chat, what they do with the batteries after the fact. The battery packs only last, like 100,000 miles, maybe 200. You may have a guarantee for replacement in the warranty, get you another 100,000 miles. Most of my vehicles got over 200,000 miles on them out here. And you want to buy a used vehicle, and you got to buy a battery pack that costs as much as a new car almost. That's, who wants to buy a used electric vehicle after it's got so many miles on it, when you got to pay a new car price to keep it upgraded? That's just that's crazy. So there'll be disposable. So now you get more disposable vehicles. You got all these battery packs, environmental damage from those. We're just not quite there yet technologically. They still have fire issues because lithium ion batteries have thermal runaway issues. We're reliant on minerals coming from basically blood minerals, because they're coming out of the Congo with child labor, a lot of sweat and tears over that. And then on top of that, a lot of the solar arrays panels are being built in China, and the production is fired by some of the nastiest coal power plants you can see, because China burns the nasty coal. They burn the dirty stuff. So it's not as great a deal energy wise as people think right now. So it's just it's kind of a cover. It's a control. They want to go all electric for everybody. They don't want you to have propane stoves. They're trying to shut down anything that's not electric, but they're not beefing up or securing our power grid, which I've advocated on for a long time here, is that we need to harden our power grid. So we're a lot more susceptible, a lot more vulnerable with the systems that they're trying to push everybody to. And we're putting a lot of, in fact, they're claiming that, I've seen some reports lately, that we're not going to be able to power all the AI systems are growing. The cloud service to serve this AI is going to be so huge. There'll be more energy going to run the cloud service for AI than the workforce uses currently, and by maybe 2030 or something like that. So how do you handle all this stuff? The bigger cloud farms, excuse me, all the server networks, the electric cars, everything else being electric. We're putting a lot of strain on the electric grid, and we're not prepared.
You bring up a litany of great problems that are things that we certainly need young people to get passionate about finding solutions for. So you're asking a bunch of questions that deal with materials and engineering and physics and chemistry and business, international trade. And so these young people that are part of the Sunrise Movement and whatever organization you've got in your local community pushing the left agenda, they need to get into study of these hard sciences and find solutions to make all our energy portfolio more diverse. And then, I just think making laws that limit human freedom to make choices for themselves is the wrong direction. It's gonna deliver inefficient market outcomes that are disastrous. There will be certainly a lot of suffering because they're forcing you to go a certain direction. Whereas if they went the other direction, one of the things we mentioned earthships a bit ago, and I visited Taos, New Mexico, where all that is based out of, and the guy was a groundbreaker on something new and different that didn't exist out before, and the architects foundation or whatever, like they shunned him, but he didn't care because he knew that he believed in his ideas. And he said, and so they use reusable materials, they use garbage, they're energy sufficient, and you can grow pineapples in the high desert. It's amazing with the greenhouse and all that stuff. But the main thing that blocks the proliferation of biotexture, earthships, or whatever is local zoning laws. So it's local government coming up with laws that force people to go a certain direction and don't give people the option or the freedom to innovate with their own property that we pay property taxes on and stuff like that. They should be allowing us to get creative. As long as we're not harming our neighbors, we should be able to innovate. And a lot of people would love to get off of the local electric grid, and they would love to, probably buy solar panels or wind for their own house, just so they don't have to pay the electric bill to the utility. They'd rather generate their own electricity. It's laws that prevent them from the freedom to do that.
Yeah,
So
they want you
these
reliant.
organizations should be, huh?
They want you reliant, dependent. Yeah, the
Right.
guy you're talking about, Michael Reynolds. He's got a nickname. He goes by the Garbage Warrior, and that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
They actually use old tires and stuff like that in building those homes. It's very labor intensive, but it's environmentally it's good. It's it's
You can. I don't know if the prices are the same because of inflation recently, but it used to be you could build one of these earthships out for $30,000, and up to, as big as your budget is. It could be as expensive as you want it. I'm sure prices have gone up because of material costs and whatnot, but nevertheless, there's always an abundance of tires out there, and there's an abundance of dirt and straw, and he can teach you how to do it. And there could be businesses that learn how to do it and could be making earthships all across the country for all the different climates that we have in the United States. It's just zoning laws that limit human freedom from allowing these things to proliferate. And I wish they would, because, and I think these climate people, if they were serious, they would be fighting laws that limit our ability to have less of a carbon impact if we wanted to do so.
bingo. Well, like I said, I've got this concept. I call it the universal habitat, and probably should come up with a better name for a more marketable name. I got some ideas
Sounds
about
cool.
trademark them, but so yeah, it goes beyond Mike Reynolds, but I also wouldn't be the purist that he is. He will not connect to any utilities, anything like that. So that limits where you can put the earthship. I'd say, hey, we'll connect to them, just don't use it.
You should be able to shut it on and off.
Yeah, it don't mean you actually got to use it. So
Right.
so
I would agree with that.
so you can kind of work with the local communities if you think about it. But then again, you're right. We need to. A lot of cities have got it where if you're not on their grid, they're going to condemn your house, even if you got electric power. They'll still condemn your house and claim that you are unsafe or something like that. They forget that we've existed as a civilization for thousands of years with no electric power, and did just fine. So there's just a lot of stuff. It's all about control. It's all about telling us what we got to do, and that's what these laws do. They're control laws. They're not freedom laws. They don't allow us to pick and choose our own path forward. I will say that we can do these things, but we need the freedom to choose, and they shouldn't try to force it down our throat within less than 7 years that we get to 80%. I mean, that's going to be. I don't see how that's not catastrophic, to be blunt about it. So, what do you think about all that?
Well, your last part of catastrophic, just the concept. We're a poor border town city, about 800,000. So it's kind of a big city, but not a lot of money in this city, because we've got a constant flow of migrants from Ciudad Juarez. Juarez is, I think, just around 2 million people, and there's a lot of maquiladores, or Mexican factories manufacturing just across the river. And so El Paso is a international trade hub of sorts, and so international trade, logistics, trucking are all major industries in El Paso. It's a big entry point, port of entry for commercial manufacturing traffic. A lot of corporations have headquarters in Ciudad Juarez and in El Paso to manage that trade. If our local government, or if our voters were to choose to vote for Prop K, that would seriously hamper their ability to do business in this city. So we would lose tons of jobs from the businesses that leave the community to go elsewhere. There are other points along the U.S. Mexican border where they could move to, and I believe they would if Prop K were to pass to some extent. there's just, I don't know. You want Texas is booming. Texas has seen a lot of benefits from our relatively low regulatory environment matched with no state income tax. We do have high property taxes, but nevertheless, a lot of people have been leaving other mostly blue states to Texas. And yet El Paso can't seem to understand the success that all the other cities of Texas have had. El Paso's population has been relatively stagnant over the last 10 years. So we just got the census back, and I think our population rose 0.5%. So whereas in cities like Austin, Dallas, Houston, Fort Worth, San Antonio, San Marcos, even College Station, Texas, a lot of those populations are booming over there with a lot of businesses moving their headquarters or their manufacturing to Texas, and the cities are growing. Their tax base is growing over there. In El Paso, we seem to be trying to emulate the failures of California, and we're pushing alongside that woke nonsense. Our congresswoman keeps trying to refer to Latinos and Latinas as Latinx, and our I don't know, our congresswoman just announced that she's going to have some sort of big campaign position promoting President Biden. So the voters of El Paso need to understand that these people do not have their best interests at heart. They've not helped our community. That's why the El Paso population is stagnated, and people and businesses are not moving to El Paso. But if Prop K were to pass, it would make it even worse. The cost of electricity, the cost of heating your home in the winter so families don't get pneumonia, or cooling your house in the summer so that people don't get heat exhaustion or heat stroke. All of that will be much more expensive. So a lot of people will just choose not to heat or cool their homes. So I would expect a health cost from the rising cost of utilities. And I mean, they're trying to tell us that, I mean, we have a Marathon oil and gas refinery in the lower valley in El Paso, within El Paso city limits. We have a large refinery, creates a lot of jobs. And I'm proud of that because my grandpa actually his whole life was a Marathon oil man. And so I think I take that as a point of pride. But I mean, the Sunrise people will say that there's a lot of health cost to the community because they're breathing the pollution from this local refinery. I guarantee that the cost of health from increased cost of food or lack of a job or increased cost of utilities will have a bigger impact on the people's health than whatever they're complaining about. We need to power our civilization as we become a more economically thriving community. If we get more prosperous, it becomes easier to have less of a carbon footprint. So I would promote a free market, not just for El Paso, but for Ciudad Juarez. So, we've seen the data that countries or communities that become more economically prosperous, their carbon climate impact goes down the more prosperous they become. So I just wish voters in El Paso would understand that, and would encourage your audience to also consider the importance of pursuing a free market. It's not that we have a bias or preference to the oil and gas industry. I know I said that I have a family history with Marathon, but honestly, I don't care if my energy is powered by electric or wind or solar, as long as it's marketable and reliable. I mean, it's good to have a diversified portfolio because, Texas has had a lot of problems with reliability on the electric grid. So that is a concern. So I'm all for a diverse portfolio. I don't like subsidies, and I don't like regulations that pick winners and losers.
Amen. Because that all has an agenda behind it.
Yeah.
So,
and more the truth. The people who are pushing the Green New Deal at the local and national level, they'll ignore a lot of scientific data that you were talking about. You were mentioning the impact of mining materials to create those solar panels. They're ignoring the fact that those wind turbines, I see them all over Texas. They're huge, enormous structures. They have a certain type of alloy that makes them able to, have that sort of strength to take the wind and generate electricity from it. But those alloys do not decompose, and they're very costly to try to chemically or physically, take them apart. So they go and find huge lots in the wilderness that they buy huge tracts of land, and they do like mass graves of those wind turbine blades and the stem that carries the blade. They just do like these giant mass graves, and these structures are ginormous. So we're talking, a lot of square acreage necessary, and they don't decompose. They just bury them in the ground where they just stay as alloys in the ground forever until we figure out what we could do with them.
By the way, there's a better concept on the horizon. I am working with actually a potential energy startup that has a lot better concept for that kind of stuff. So I am actually supporting the upstart of a new initiative, and it will be green energy. But like I said, I don't believe in just forcing stuff down people's throat. But this will be, it won't have all that non-destructible, forever chemical alloy stuff in it, and it won't chop birds up like the systems they got today. It's a lot more efficient. So they're, we can come up with better stuff, but they're pushing that stuff, and it's a mess as it is. Those things, those big 3-blade generators, they break down, they catch on fire. If it gets too cold, the gearboxes freeze up. That's what they discovered in Texas when it got cold. Those things were freezing up. The solar panels were covered with snow. They didn't have any power when they needed it the most. So, right now, just to jump into this stuff without the right kind of forethought, by pushing the schedule like 2030 is that's going to be a real problem. We're just not ready for that. And, we got to, educate people. They think we can just jump right into this stuff, and it's just not there. But they have their actual solution. What they're not telling you is a lot of them know that we don't have the materials, the resources to put the entire United States as is on electric cars, but they got another plan for that. They call it the 15-minute city. They want everybody to move into cities. And there's even talk about a 5-minute city. What that means is that everything would be accessible to you within either 15 or 5 minutes. And that sounds kind of neat by itself, but they want to fix it where you can't even get outside of the zone unless you apply, maybe but so many times a week, or if you apply for it. So pay your papers, please. They're going to track you. They're going to make sure, so it's all about control. Forget going to that restaurant over the hill, 20 minutes away that you like, so you're going to be in a lot of bland, the same stuff over and over and over. Now, there's some merits to having things accessible, but again, they want to force everything. They don't want to make anything a freedom of choice. They don't believe in freedoms. They believe in straitjacketing everyone. And, it's putting people in.
We're talking about like Agenda 21. Is that like that 5-minute city thing?
This is kind of beyond that. This is a big part, it's like the 2030 stuff, but they're pushing. This is like an extra agenda. In fact, even that big city they're building in Saudi Arabia, which is supposed to be so big, so long, it's going to be segmented into basically 5 or 15-minute city blocks. And the Saudi Arabians, one of the reasons they probably made the recent deals with China is they're going to use China's social control system to monitor the people in their country. Which if you don't want to, if you're a royal family and you're concerned that your population might get tired of you and rise up against you, especially when their oil runs out or people quit buying it, they want social control. They want to be able to control everybody. So now they got a place to put them. A lot of their solutions are put everybody in ISO ship container homes in the city by the railroad tracks. The railroad tracks weren't exactly the best place to be in some countries that are autocratic, not autocratic, the despotic nations. Germany, that was not really a good place to be next to the railroad track because they led to some very undesirable places. I said that's exactly what's happening. But yeah, it's we've got to have a lot of forethought in where we go and make sure we preserve freedom. And I'm going to show something here. I'm going to do a little share here just to show people some of the avenues for fighting City Hall, your state or national level. I'm going to do a share screen here.
Okay.
I've started something called the Freedom Restoration Foundation, and Cowboy Roy Rogers is in the house. He is one of our officers in this, and our friend Doug Thompson, who introduced you to me, is also quite involved in this. And our previous webmaster passed away on us, so I think Doug's going to pick this up for the time being to update our website. So I got to get him up on this. I got to give him, so we're a little bit behind on this. But the website, we like to put action alerts on here, just so people can see. This has got a bunch of action alerts on them. Now, these are old. We got to update these. We tell people what they can do, how, what the problem is, how to take action on it. Ooh.
I'm all about action alerts. Yeah.
So I didn't like that video. Well, as you can imagine, social media isn't going to like a lot of stuff that promotes freedom. So you can see they've taken this video down.
Amen.
Oh my gosh, freedom. You can't have none of that. We take on several different topic areas, guys. So these are great details. But if you go to our actual, this is kind of what we're about here. Anything that's freedom oriented, and we don't call this the Freedom Conservation Society. We call it the.
No, I'm saying the general gist of it is it's what we're all about. Yeah.
Yeah, and we don't even have paid memberships. If you this website's financed out of my pocket with the aid of some donations from some of our members. And I'm going to go to the Action Center on here. If you get into this website, you'll see we got an Action Center. This gives you details about how to contact your Congress critters. If you go below these actions, again, we put them here. And make your voices count. It goes into the basics: national bill tracking, state bill tracking. Now for your cities, you got to be more proactive to keep up with what's going on in your cities, and that's where they're really hitting us, as you've observed here. But this shows you how to find out who your Congress critters are.
Yeah.
And about sending emails and calling, writing, what to write, what to say on the phone. And then there's a recap here of all these websites and resources. Now somehow, putting one in for every city would be quite a bit, but maybe we can figure out a way to have a clearinghouse website or something to cover that. But the city, you just got to pay attention to your local government. You got to get proactive or have people that do that, because there's so much happening there right now. And they're also
it's so I got involved with politics because of Ron Paul. So I'm all about freedom and liberty, and I read several of his books, watched all his debates, and I had joined his college campaign effort was Young Americans for Ron Paul, and he had him on college campuses, and then he turned it into Young Americans for Liberty. A lot of people know them on social media. So I learned a lot about the importance of liberty and economics, free market economics. And then I got plugged in with my local Republican Party, and I know that the system is kind of rigged, and the people at the top of both of these two dominant parties in America are corrupt. So I wouldn't disagree with folks there, but in my local Republican Party, a lot of people that share our concerns and our perspective, they go looking to do something about it. And so I linked up with them. They kind of pushed me back for several years because I was a Ron Paul guy, but then I didn't go nowhere. And so I think they gave up, and they realized that I could be very helpful to a lot of the things that they've now come our way on. It's funny because they opposed Ron Paul so adamantly in 2012 and 2008. And now they really all kind of agree and shun the legacy of John McCain and Mitt Romney. It's ironic, but I found community with those folks, and a lot of them, just because you're talking about local and stuff like that. People often always want to approach us saying they want to run for Congress and they want to get involved, so they can go to DC. And we only have one district representative for our congressional district, and we're a very blue district. So often we try to talk people out of it. And a lot of people are just way too obsessed and concerned with things at the national level. Whereas if we all got focused on the state and local level, paid more attention to what's happening locally, city government, your ISD, we'd have a much bigger potential long term to have change at the national level. So people need to stop thinking so top down. They need to start focusing much more bottom up, and get patriots elected to their school board, city council, or county commissioners court, and fight for freedom and free markets and civil rights at that level. And the people that do well at those lower tiers then may someday be viable to run for higher office and maybe get that congressional spot, which is really hard to get. So I encourage activists everywhere to focus less on what's happening in Washington, D.C. I pretty much have written it off as a lost cause. There's some really good people in Washington, D.C., and we're grateful for them, but for the most part, they have no path to really getting the debt under control. They're not showing us a path to auditing the Federal Reserve. Instead, they're going after central digital banking currency, stuff like that. So they're going in the wrong direction. The republic has lost its way. If Americans ever wanted to restore the republic, they need to start focusing at the local level. It's kind of like what Jordan Peterson would tell people in his advice for life. He says, go clean your room first. And then after you've cleaned your room, what else can you do at the personal level? And once you've mastered your personal life, then sure, go abroad and see what you can do to take on responsibility to help others in the community and grow from the personal level outward. But there's a lot of people that they're really obsessed with trying to solve problems at the national, even international level. But we all need to focus more locally, I think, to begin with.
Wow. Absolutely. So, some of us in my group here, we're taking it to a whole nother level. I'm gonna do another share here in a second.
Yeah, go for it.
We're going even beyond, because we really have recognized that, one, we got to be self-reliant, but we need our own little communities to do that, so we can have each other's back. And so we've started this survival tribe network, and the lady who tasked with organizing our people that were trying to sign up realized the task was too big to do just by taking emails and running it through a spreadsheet. So she actually set up a website. She paid for this out of her own pocket at some great expense. And she's in our chat room. She goes by Wise Owl. And there's even a picture of her right here. So you don't have to reveal who you are. And some of us are, I'm like John Hancock. Here I am. So, tell the whole world I'm for freedom. And, so that probably puts a target on my back, but that's okay. If people come here after me, I've got a lot of worms to feed. So that's fine. What I mean. So, leave me alone. That's all I want, to be left alone. But, I am out here advocating stuff that a lot of them don't like. But this whole idea is we form these groups. This is where people go in and join on their own, and they can find people in their community that they can connect with and start their own survival network, their own survival tribe. And we plan to network this together because we really want to have basically a whole parallel society. I've even heard Steve Turley, he's picked that up. If you've ever seen Steve Turley's channel on YouTube, he started talking about that in the last few videos of his own, but we've been talking that for a couple of years here. Oh, Wiseau says I never called her a lady before. She's definitely a lady. So, hey, we got Jason in the house. So, yeah, we've got a lot of good people here in our community here. We're a family here over in Green Grapes, by the way. We're a little bit different than a lot of other folks and a lot of the other channels out there. So we kind of stick together. Well, guys, we're going to open this up for questions. So if y'all have questions, go ahead and pop them in the chat here, and I'll try to ask. I'll try to bring them up to James here. So again, our special guest tonight is James Peynado, and he is a community activist, and he's working to try to roll back what they're trying to force down the throats in El Paso. And so we all got to be aware of this. We all got to pay attention to that. And Cowboy Will Rogers did share the channel of Doug Thompson with Uncommon News 777's his YouTube channel. So y'all need to subscribe to that, and also go over and subscribe to Cowboy Will Rogers channel, because he posts these alerts, the later alerts that we have posted on our website there. And we also have a group on Facebook, and there's a group on MeWe in case Facebook goes down or you don't want to be on Facebook. So we got a couple of other groups out there that you can go in. You can join the Facebook group. It don't cost you anything. We do have some screening questions, because we want to control the opposition coming in, the people that hate freedom. So
for both the Survival Network and the FRF.
Yeah, Freedom Restoration Foundation, Survival Network. We got both of these started here, and
okay,
I want to get involved in some of this yourself. We could definitely use
cool.
good people like you in the Freedom Restoration Foundation. We got like 1,000 members on Facebook, so we can definitely pick up some momentum. We got the beginnings of a movement here when you get that kind of people joining these days, because people these days aren't joiners. They don't tend to join organizations, and membership a lot of organizations is falling. But I think we can grow this and just spread the word of freedom and grow these communities like this. That's what we're aiming at. All right, so let's see if we're getting questions here. Let's see. New Day says in Maine, 125 people live on a piece of property. You can start your own town. There you go. So that might be a way to go at it. Yeah, Joe, we are Uncle Sam's misguided children. Of course, you've heard Joe Biden say that families don't own the children. The whole idea is
right.
They keep it they want the state to take over everything. That's what we're trying to do here. So let me stop that share. I just wanted to share those things so people can be aware of what we got out there. There you go. Jason from Avers from Green Country Agroforestry shared Cowboy Rogers channel. So Jason's got a good channel too. That guy's one of the smartest people I've ever seen. I've had him on my channel a few times. He really tells people how to be self-sufficient, grow their own food and such. So he's got another channel you should join. So somebody post his link in there. You can post it yourself if you want, Jason. We like to get people supporting a lot of these other channels that are supporting this channel, because they got a lot of good content. Jason's channel is just packed full of very useful content. Joe Kula says Red Dawn and Wolverines. Someone, guys, if you all got a question, post it in here, and let's see if y'all want to ask something to James.
I could show more about the climate charter if you'd like.
Yeah, go ahead. Share what you want.
Okay. Let me see. Hold up for a second. Pull it up.
I got somebody trying to call me. Don't realize it. You don't
share.
Call me.
Here is the organization that was hired to push Prop K in El Paso. They're Ground Game, Texas. And they pushed the petition for the climate charter. So they got 30,000 signatures in 120 days to do it. And they organized all this. This organization is actually based out of Austin, or just north of Austin. But it's a statewide funded organization. And so you can donate, up to $500 or more there. But while they were pushing Prop K in El Paso, they were also pushing the San Antonio Justice Charter of 2023 in San Antonio. And so this is Prop A in San Antonio. And it started out pretty innocent enough. They wanted to decriminalize marijuana, which, as a libertarian, I have no qualms with that. I would have supported that. But then it went south from there. They added to this one mundane, what I would consider mundane proposal. They wanted to add abortion. They wanted to decriminalize it. They wanted to ban dangerous no-knock warrants. I'm actually open to that. But then they wanted to do a cite and release policy for non-violent, low-level offenses. And so what that means is they want to decriminalize theft of property, up to $750. So that's the poison pill that they decided would be a good idea to put in their Prop A. It started out with decriminalizing marijuana, and before you know it, this cite and release policy for non-violent low-level offenses effectually decriminalizes property theft of up to $750. So if you've seen San Francisco or Portland, where people go into Walgreens to just take whatever they want, and the store manager wants to call the police come, and there's nothing they'll do about it. They just let the guy off with a warning, cite and release. So they're trying to San Francisco, San Antonio, with Prop A, and that's ground game Texas, same ground game that is pushing all this stuff in El Paso, is pushing this garbage in San Antonio. So, they've got, this is Prop K propaganda from ground game Texas in El Paso. And that's what they're trying to do in San Antonio. So there's that. And then, how do I, there we go. This thing's blocking. Stop share. So that's ground game Texas. There's another concerning, this is a Sunrise movement, and people might want to become familiar with it. This is a George Soros funded organization that is nationwide, but this is the local chapter, Sunrise El Paso, and it just says who they are, and they're focused on, they present themselves as young, idealistic people fighting for all human rights, but they push climate policy as their main agenda, but they also push for social economic issues. And they're pretty well funded. They've got chapters all across the country. This is a pretty sharp website. All of these people have very sharp websites. I don't know, just they'll give us a hard time because they say that we're funded by oil and gas to fight Prop K. And certainly we are taking advantage of that opportunity. But these guys, they definitely have plenty of financial resources at hand to do what they're trying to do. So that's the Sunrise movement. Watch out for it. A lot of people don't know that, like, your local Democrat Party doesn't actually do all these things. They use a lot of these nonprofits. So like a Democrat Party in your town might be just a skeleton, but all these nonprofits make up the muscle to push the Overton window further and further to the left. And so that's how it works, is they use nonprofits to push their agenda ever further left. I don't know. You were talking about 5-minute cities. What I find is that, like, all over the world, when you travel, when you go to Paris, France, or Madrid, Spain, or Lisbon, Portugal, you want to get a feel for that city. Just like if you were to visit Tucson, Arizona, or Birmingham, Alabama, you want to get something unique, some unique experience out of that. And with this 5-minute city thing, that's part of something international, and it's very central planned. It's very corporate, top down, and I noticed that it has an impact on the local culture. So they're not big on citizens owning their own businesses. They're not big on small businesses. They're therefore more like just kind of having a generic, same set of corporations in every city, all within 5 minutes of one another. Like these people get contracts. So when you go to Lisbon expecting a unique experience in Portugal, you might find that it's a lot more similar to what you saw in Madrid, because these people push things so much at the corporate international level that you're losing a lot of the uniqueness to all the communities of the world with this top-down agenda.
Amen. Now, something you and I had talked about, I believe it was last night, is that I think we can win over the hearts and minds of all these young people that we've lost if we can really just show them in contrast one way versus another way. You look here in Alabama, for example, the city of Birmingham,
Right.
most urban areas, the core of the urban area is on the left side of the agenda. And what you find across the country is people are moving from these places, or leaving counties, states, cities that are on that side of the spectrum because taxes are high, the schools stink. They tell everybody you raise property taxes, you're going to have better schools. You do it for schools. That's always the excuse. Alabama's got the lowest property taxes in the United States, in the whole union. Yet you come here and I can show you just ginormous, brand new, spanking Lehman schools popping up everywhere. They're all over the place. They're everywhere around here. Ginormous schools. And we do it with the lowest property tax because we force efficiency into the system by not over gassing the money into it. We spend way too much money. We're way over head over heels in debt, and it goes to graft and corruption and overbloated bureaucracies and things that aren't needed. I mean, you wind up with all kind of administrators and stuff. You don't wind up with actually building new schools and are getting better education. What you find is also these same people, they want to, say they want to decriminalize crime. They want to turn people out of the jails and prisons, turn them loose on us. They want to defund police, but they also want to take away your right to defend yourselves. So it don't even make sense. It don't add up. And most people are fed up with this. Really, they are, and they're voting with their feet. That's why Texas has remained so far on the red side of the spectrum, is from the people leaving that in other places. And that may be the hope. But the real challenge and the proof in the pudding is just take some cities, for example. Huntsville, Alabama went last year from being the third largest city to the largest city in Alabama. It's booming. It's growing. It's got a conservative leadership in the mayor and the board and the city council, I should say. I've been saying boards a lot. City councils are usually a more applicable term. It varies, I guess, from place to place. But the city councils is what we really got to watch. And what you see is in Huntsville, it's very pro-growth. They're attracting a lot of new industry in. And they've rebuilt a lot of the old decrepit stuff and got rid of it. And Huntsville's it's a pretty city. It's very attractive to young people. We've got a section with all kind of little glitzy bars and whatever, craft beers and stuff. That's what a lot of these young folks like. So, and that's all under a conservative administration. They're trying to appeal to young people. And this is a very attractive, very growth-oriented city. We've got jobs out the gazoo, and there's no reason for people to accept all this. And we're not about control. We're not forcing stuff down people's throats here. And it's working. It works great. And that's if you look at the difference between, we got law and order, peaceful city. We don't have riots. Nobody's burning the city down. Now, a couple of groups showed up, and that wasn't permitted. They weren't going to get to go there in Huntsville, Alabama. You're not going to do that in Alabama, the stuff, at least not here in this area. You might in downtown Birmingham. I haven't even seen it there, though. So there are a lot of, we're family oriented, we're law and order oriented, and we're just not going to permit a lot of that kind of stuff. So this could be an example, but we've got a beautiful city, and we got prosperity for everybody here. So you don't have to put up with all that stuff. That's not the way to go. All over the world, people are trying to flee countries that are socialist, countries that are authoritarian, countries that are to the left side of the spectrum, the communist countries, especially the communist countries. You don't see people trying to move in it. It's going the other way. So that tells you what people really want. People want freedom. When you have freedom, people are free to innovate and come up with their own business ideas. And yeah, maybe only 1 in 7 survive 7 years, but those that do make a huge difference in the community. Most of the people employed in the United States are employed by small companies, small businesses, because that's where the innovation is. That's where people are really working to make things work. And they're trying to tamp that down. One of the things, the shutdowns we had in the last couple of years really stifled a lot of local businesses. They would shut them down and let big business go. So it was because they were afraid things would spread. So if you go to a small shop that just had a few people, you might catch something, but you could go to Walmart that had a big crowd going in there and you would be okay going to Walmart. So you see how this was? It really favored the billionaires. It favored the big guys. It didn't really help the small enterprises. I tell people on my channel all the time, I say, shop local, buy local, support your local artisans, support your local. And if you need to get your electrical system fixed in your home or something like that, go to the independent guy. He's going to do a better job than the ones with big ads because he knows what he's doing. He's not going to try to replace your entire HVAC system. He's going to go in and fix what the problem is, and you'll save money and get better service. And these guys are being squashed out, and this happened at the city council level too, because what they do is they pass all kind of regulations where you've got to like get 12 or 13, 20 something. I think one guy told me you had to get 20 something certifications to be an electrician. And that means he's got to go pass a test for every one of them. He's got to pay a fee, and some of these like $1,000. Well, how much of that can you bear as a small guy? This is the bigger guys who have the overhead can carry that, and they're hiring kids, to do the work who don't know what side of the screwdrivers has got the tip on it to go out and do stuff. And they're doing it for safety. They claim, this is better for your safety. They're full of it. They're full of hogwash. So this don't help us. It don't help anybody. I had one of those companies do some electrical work here in the house, and it was actually a hazard what they did, and it cost a lot of money.
You touch on a point that I kind of wanted to pick up before I forget it, but how do we reach people and attract them to our side? And I think because I try to keep one finger on the pulse of what are these far left radicals thinking, what's on their mind, how do they think, how do they process? And so when I'm in a city where I see a lot of that presence, there's some of that in El Paso, but when I go to visit Albuquerque, New Mexico, or even more so Santa Fe, New Mexico, or Austin, Texas, I just kind of observe and watch and try to learn something, or I'll listen to a NPR or I don't know what other channels out there that are thinking a different way than we are, just to understand the other side. And I think in San Francisco, Portland, and Seattle, they're very far left. They're communist over there. Communism is socially popular. Socialism is popular. We call it anarcho-socialism, anarcho-Marxism is popular over there. All these far left ideas are popular. I think that's maybe why they decriminalized theft of property. So they don't mind if citizens go into a store, especially if it's a corporate chain like Walgreens, Walmart, even Whole Foods, and steal property. Their community has decided they're not willing to enforce laws to protect private property because they don't believe in property rights. And yet the contrast is that I remember one time I was passing through Albuquerque and I had some time. So I went to go check out the farmer's market there. And it was a very left of center environment. I could tell these people are all quite progressive in their mindset and thinking. And yet they love their farmers markets. So they're at some level, these people appreciate markets, appreciate small business, their idea or notion of small business and markets. And maybe there's some overlap with what you're saying about shopping local. I'm not inherently opposed to Walmart or any of these corporate chains, but we are. And Walmart used to be a conservative family that was a pro-American business, but as the corporation got larger and larger, I think it's fair to say they lost their founding principles, and they answer to their stakeholders, and their stakeholders are going to go with whatever's politically correct. So they have no principles that I can support any longer because I've seen them, start to support the narrative, the political correct propaganda, and they've moved away from appreciating America that gave them the opportunity to grow to the size that they've grown. So I don't mean to have any kind of bias towards a large business, but the laws, the regulations, the taxes, those are what enable the businesses that got big to stay big and get bigger. And once they get big enough, they're able to hire the lobbyists and the lawyers to go to your state capitals and the national capital to write legislation and just give it to the congressmen or the senators to get those bills passed. And so, yeah, the big corporations are the ones writing the laws, and the DC or capital in your state politicians are the ones that are taking that lobbying money and filing the bill on those corporations' behalf or whatever. And what the end result is that the markets become consolidated, whether you're talking about the banking industry or the food supplying industry, you name it. I think they're very proud of their regulation that I think the Trump administration overturned. But what was the name of it? I think Elizabeth Warren pushes for it all the time. It prevents your saving and loans banks from using that money for hedge funds and investments and stuff like that. There was some piece of legislation. It's got like two senators' names. You know what I'm talking about?
Not off the top of my head.
Well, like the Russ Feingold Act or something like that. I wish I knew it, but
All right.
the left really wants control on regulating the banks. And so they were very proud when they got the regulation that they wanted, so that there'll be no more banking collapses. And what we're seeing instead, what we saw instead was the shrinking. You lose small business banks, you lose mid-sized banks, and the industry becomes consolidated with the fewer remaining banks that are the largest. They now have more market share, so that pie is more theirs than it was before that regulation was implemented. And it causes kind of somewhat permanent damage. The only way to diversify the banking market or any other industry, agriculture, if you're in either farming or ranching, regulations is a huge problem. We don't have the small farms and ranching operations that we used to 100 years ago. And a lot of that is because of the regulations written by the larger, if not the ranch and farmers, there's also the processors, the meat distributors and whatnot. They set the tone, and it's caused a lot of ranchers to just sell their land off to a bigger operation. And I think that's not good. It makes us less free and more dependent.
Yeah, somebody was bringing up they're attacking TikTok in here, but I was about to comment. Says, yeah, I was going to say that you might have to think if you have long-term or long-form content. They want to keep it short. You don't have to think. So they're afraid for people to think, and thinking is not something they teach anymore. They want everybody to react, and they want them to react from the level of emotion, not logic. Emotion's good, but it needs to be tempered by logic, and they don't think things through. This whole thing that you're talking about now, this Proposition K, they're not thinking this through, what it really means, what's it going to do locally to the city in the long term. Like I said, it's not the green that's the problem. It's how they want to implement it. It's how they want to drive it. It's how they want to force it through, and that's a big issue. As for farmers markets, hey, I sell the farmers market. I'm all for markets.
I think there's some overlap with us and them on this. It's just our solution is to deregulate, to let people have the freedom to innovate, and their solution is to destroy corporations and create laws that make it so that you can't innovate. There's overlap. Like, we have somewhat of the same end result. There's some overlap on the ends. There's just a lot of differences on the means on how to get there. we think that the means have to be just to get to the point where we want to get to, and they are a by any means necessary mindset. And so, they tolerate those on their side that get violence, that employ violence to get what they want. And we're adamantly opposed to that. And we see the state as it's not something to use as a violent regulatory arm to get what you want. So we prefer persuasion. We prefer market action. And so, yeah, I try to seek common ground with the other side, because there are neighbors, and I think it's important to do that. But anyway.
Well, we need to find a way to reach through things that, that they can respond to. They've been fed an agenda. They get everything's one-sided now. All the media is controlled. We've seen the recent firing at Fox News, which basically they cause their network to self-destruct, but I guess they think it's worth it to them to control the agenda, to control the narrative. And it's all about narrative. And the media is on the forefront of this narrative control. The media, be it news media, be it the platforms that we come to on here, they've all got, and it's interesting. How is it they all have the same narrative? How is it that all these supposedly independent news networks, if you watch the local news on all these different networks, how many times have you seen the collage of videos where they're all saying the same thing word for word all over the country? So there's definitely, how does that happen? I mean, where's the independence at? That makes you wonder who's actually writing this narrative. Where does it really come from? That's a scary proposition when you think about it. And so, people aren't thinking, they're not thinking things through. We've just got to find a way. I did a video called Rose-Colored Glasses, where I was talking about, we need to understand the opposition. To do so, you got to understand everybody's got a worldview. What is their worldview? How do you understand it? You got to do that just to communicate with them. And a lot of us lose sight of that. But I think it's very critical. The pharma Mika is part of, hooked on, okay, yeah, they're trying to get our kids on drugs and things like that. We got big pharma's not our friends. I mean, if you look at, they control a lot of the media because they're the big advertisers. Somebody's mentioned some things, posted that in our news. Hey, we got Doug in the house. Doug, with Uncommon News.
Hey, Doug.
So, Doug, we had Cowboy Will Rogers put a link to your channel. Everybody needs to go to Doug's channel and sign up for it. A lot of good, hard hitting news. Doug is hard hitting. He puts it out there. Let's see. I'm trying to read some of the comments. Eventually, hey, we got a super chat from Doug. Thank you, Doug. Appreciate it, sir. And we got, let's see. We had, what is it? Eventually they will see it all. Yeah, manipulated. Yeah, it is as wise as I was pointing out in here. But a lot of people are waking up. A lot, I think a whole lot of the country don't want nothing to do this. This is why I've talked about us just having our own parallel society. They want to put us all on a currency, a central bank digital currency. You won't even own your money. It's going to have a string on every little credit unit, what they may call it, a dollar, what do they call it? They put in your bank. They'll control how you can spend it. You won't be able to spend it on things they don't want you to spend it on. And when you do spend it, they'll know where you spend it, how you spend it, and everything about it. It's total tracking, total control is what they want to go to.
So certainly I would push people to get involved in their community with like-minded people who are concerned about these things like currency or farming, and build community. I know that on the left, that's actually what they want too. So there's overlap because both people like ourselves and these radicals on the left, we both value community. But as far as currency goes, I've been trying to get DC politicians to in the Federal Reserve ever since Ron Paul 2012, and we've not really gotten anywhere with that. We've gotten some symbolic votes on auditing the Federal Reserve, but I feel like at this point it's just way too expensive to change it. I mean, if you've got a good congressman that's fighting the good fight, like a few of them up there, Thomas Massey, um, Chip Roy, then awesome, good on you. But otherwise, I wouldn't even worry about it. I would just worry about your local government and your state legislature. In Texas, we are pushing back against the central banking digital currency. So we're pushing a bill to have the state treasury mint gold and silver that you could buy, and that would be able to use that as a legal tender. And so just
Oh,
trying to push back on unconstitutional national federal action with getting your state to have the backbone to push back against that. And I think that's we need federalism. We need a return to federalism so that we can live at peace with our Democrat neighbors in the country. So it is very important for us to get more aware of what's going on in our state legislature as well as city government, because our states have the muscle and power, I think, to push back against that. So try to get yourselves a conservative or liberty loving state legislature that can push back against the Federal Reserve. Because I'm kind of tired on trying to get Washington, D.C. to do the right thing. I don't think they ever will. They certainly never will unless we get first our state legislatures to heal and start doing what's right. So I'm certain Alabama's on the right track, and Texas. That's what a lot of our activists have been doing. Is there's been a lot of focus on measures that would allow us to use precious metals and crypto. I think several years ago we created a Texas gold depository bank, so you'd be able to keep your gold stored in the Texas depository. I think there was a simple. We wanted to have whatever Texas's share of the gold that's in Fort Knox to be brought to the Texas depository. I don't know whatever came of that, but I think all that is productive. In addition to obviously just getting informed, there's a lot of like organizations like there's meetup.com, and they sometimes push some lefty stuff, but the website's still good. I've found people who are interested in crypto and precious metals, and I've been able to meet up with them and learn a lot more about how to make myself recession proof in case the dollar collapses. And it's becoming a more realistic concern where even my cousins who've always been critics of cryptocurrency, gold and silver, they work for corporate financial advising, like not JP Morgan. Oh, you would know the name. I won't even say it, but there's some corporate name, New York, like New York Life. They do financial advising, but it's not New York Life. Edward Jones. And so they've always told me that, well, I'm a financial advisor, James, and so I wouldn't recommend getting into any of that. Now they're starting to see the BRICS nations getting stronger and challenging U.S. hegemony, wanting to trade with one another in their own currencies rather than the U.S. dollar, and that's what's prevented the hyperinflation that a lot of free marketeers have always predicted would come and is inevitable. And so a lot of people have shot back. Well, how come that we don't have hyperinflation yet? How come the dollar is still here? It hasn't collapsed yet. The more we overextend our foreign policy with this unconstitutional militarism going on in Ukraine and in other countries, we continue to overextend our foreign policy, and other nations of the world are getting tired of always taking orders and dealing with the U.S. We unfortunately lost a lot of our moral high ground in the prolonged Iraq occupation. So that's very unfortunate because, like our intervention in Libya. So all this intervention has caused nations to not look at the U.S. like they used to. It's the one that provides order in the world, and so we're seeing Brazil, Russia, India, China, and forget who that, South Africa. Like South Africa is printing as we speak, silver, the deuterans or something, Kuderans. They're printing their own silver currency and getting into the game to make their currency as strong or stronger than the dollar.
Yeah, I wanna
Because
point
a lot of people see that, huh?
I want to point out something. There is a currency that you can get now. It's called goldbacks, and the goldback is it's gold printed out
Right.
in a bill. You can actually so it's unlike, you know, if you carry around a bar of gold, how do you shave off enough of it to get a loaf of bread? You can't.
Right.
It's just not
Yeah.
practical. But this organization came up with these things called goldbacks. They're very artful. They're pretty. It's a nice form of, it's a money, because gold really is real money.
Yes.
And you can buy it. I got links in New Days Always just shared a link in my channel here to goldbacks that you can go in and get these. And this is part of our self-reliance. This is part of our creating a parallel society. This is a way you can trade and barter something that has real value in a discreet manner, as opposed to just, you know, taking and whittling off and shaving off pieces of gold off of a bar. So it's a lot more practical. It's, you know, you can put them in you can fold them and put them in your wallet just like regular money, because that's really what it is. So yeah, this is a way to get around some of this stuff. We need our own means of trade. We need our own means of bartering. We need these kind of things. And yeah, what else do they want to do? You know, they're trying to regulate out everything. It's healthy. You know, they really actually want to make it where if you want supplements, you got to get a prescription for it. That means one, it's going to be harder to get. It's going to cost a lot more. It's just like I used to go buy heart medicine for a dog at Walmart, but now you got to get a prescription from a veterinarian for it, and it's god awful expensive. Plus, the veterinarians aren't cheap either, not around here. So it's all just getting ridiculous. It's all about control and giving the big guys more and more power. So what it is in our society, yeah, and nothing that a lot of the people, the young guys on the left, don't realize is they're playing into the uber rich. Why is it the uber rich always promote this stuff? It's because they're trying to increase their market share. They want to stamp out the little guy, and that's really what's happening. Is the uber rich are promoting this stuff, because it's not about helping you. It's not about freedom. It's about giving them more control. So really, in our country today, we got something that's beyond left and right. It's really the uber elite versus everybody else. It's just they've been able to play some people to be their followers and enforcing the agenda for them. So we got to pay attention to this. This is what it really boils down to. And there's another channel on YouTube that some people watch. It's called Steve Turley. He's actually picked that up too. Now, I've talked about that for a couple of years. And he's picking up some things recently I've been talking about for a while. Hey, we got a super chat for Cha-Cha. Thank you, Cha-Cha, very much. Appreciate that. Yeah, I like to call people out when they give us a super chat in here. So yeah, so it's all about being sustainable. It's all about being self-sustainable. Founding fathers intended us to have a well-regulated mission, not a standing U.S. military. Exactly, they didn't want a standing army. They were afraid of a standing military. Who is a well-regulated mission? It's everybody. The militia in the old days was everybody. It was the citizens. We were all part of it. If you were a citizen, you were automatically deemed to be part of it. You know, they hoped there would be a little training in case we got invaded. That's what the real regulator was about. That maybe we get together and train if we got invaded. They didn't want us going in and being involved in the politics of other countries. They wanted us to, you know, just look after our own. With the exception maybe kicking the Barbary pirates, you know, and it's kind of interesting how all the European countries. You realize in Europe that people were afraid to live by the Mediterranean Sea until the United States went over and kicked those pirates, you know, from the halls of Tripoli, you know.
Oh yeah,
legend. They don't take care of their own business in Europe. They had, you know, we had to go over and save them in World War I. We had to save them in World War II throughout the Cold War, and they're not taking care of their backyard today. Why? We always got to be the ones to do that, and out of our treasury, out of our running our debt up. Why do we have to be the guys taking care of everybody else? They got, you know, collectively, Europe's got more people than us. They got collectively a huge gross national product, but they don't spend near as much on their defense. And they're afraid they'll break a fingernail or something, or might get a little mud on their shoes. I don't know what it is. But why should we be covering everything for them?
No, I think we've allowed our nation to lose sight of what made us strong to begin with. and we need to return to that. We're very hyper concerned with the affairs around the world that have little to nothing to do with us. And there was maybe a time when America was a shining light on a hill, like an example for the rest of the world, and we brought some sort of inspiration to other countries. But now we've kind of lost our way. That's why I'm not big on in conservative circles. There's a lot of talk about American exceptionalism, or in Texas we have Texas exceptionalism mindsets. I'm not big on exceptionalism of a nation, because that seems to block you from understanding that you're not by default just exceptional. You should always be striving to be better or your best. I think the founding ideals of our country are exceptional. So I believe that the Bill of Rights and this concept of individual liberty, the concept of limiting our government to a constitution, and the free market that we once had, these were all very exceptional ideals and values of our country that made our country great. And we lost sight of that. We became prideful, and in our hubris, we lost our republic, and we're more of a oligarchic empire with all our militarism abroad. But that doesn't mean that it's not too late to turn back and return to those core values. We've seen that with all the military might that we had at our disposal and all the time and money, in Afghanistan, we could not conquer or occupy, Afghanistan and create they don't care in Afghanistan about Kabul. They don't know what Kabul is, and that's their capital, and the people of Afghanistan could care less. They are ungovernable over there in Afghanistan. That's how in the United States we used to be like that. We used to be ungovernable. And the progressives at the turn of the 20th century sought to change that. And so, we had some of the worst decades of our nation's history, like around 1912, when we, introduced the federal income tax. We removed the state legislators appointing your U.S. senators, and now U.S. senators are elected to the U.S. by popular vote in each state. I think that was like the 16th and 17th Amendment. And then, of course, the creation of the Federal Reserve. So we transitioned in that early period of the 20th century to a more, centralized economy, and we made ourselves governable and weak as a result of that. There's some great history about the state of Texas, in contrast to our neighbor to my north in New Mexico, because I'm in El Paso. But for most of Texas, New Mexico's west. Anyway, so the Spanish, in trying to conquer North America and expand its empire into the region that is now the U.S., the Spanish first went into New Mexico, and they found the Pueblo Indians along the Rio Grande to be not so difficult to conquer. And they were quite cruel in their methods back then, but it was a much more harsh world, of course. But they eventually did manage to conquer much of New Mexico and Arizona, because these Indians were so central in their society. They did have a revolt and they threw out the Spanish, but then they had a hard time with the Apaches, so they actually requested the Spanish to come back in. And so, in contrast, when the Spanish tried to colonize Texas, they found that they could not do that, because this new tribe of Indians, the Comanche and the Apache, were ungovernable, and the Spanish could not take Texas. They never could. And so then when Mexico took over from Spain, they could not really do much in getting past San Antonio and Goliad, because the Comanche were ungovernable. The Comanches, an ungovernable people, very decentralized, had weak leaders, controlled a vast territory for about 100 years, known as Comancheria. And they were a strong people, a strong and free people. I'm not saying that we should adopt all the cultural trappings because it was a very warlike nation and we shouldn't be that warlike, but they defended their property and they held outsiders at bay, people who coveted their lands. They would keep them at bay because they understood the importance of the Second Amendment. It's not just about guns; it's about spears and bows and arrows and whatever it takes to do the job. Our Creator does give us inalienable rights, but if you cannot defend those rights, then those rights can be taken away. And the Comanche understood that. So,
the second A, if you know what I mean. Oh yeah, we call them
Yeah.
nuts on this channel. We twist things around so that the Algor has no rhythms, won't hit us as hard. But hey, I want to thank New Days for super chat. Thank you very much. But yeah, without the second amendment is the one that guarantees you all the rest of them. Without that, you got nothing. You know,
Sure.
that's why that's probably why they want to take it from. You know, there's a lot of people in this country that are no friends of freedom, and they tend to be that elite clique I'm talking about. But they've through their media, they've hypnotized a lot of people into thinking there's a different way to go and that we're all wrong. And they tell us that this country is the worst place that ever existed, that we're horrible, that everything here is terrible. And so they discourage a lot of the young people. But really and truly, what country conquers or defeats a country in battle and then turns around and builds them back up and sets them free? We're the only ones that's ever done that. So everybody else grabs it and holds it and takes retribution out of them, taxes them heavily, and forces them directly into their system. Now we have kind of enforced some alliances on some of them, but you look at Germany and you look at Japan, they've got free will. They don't always go along with us. And, they have their own governments. Now, yeah, we did for temporarily have MacArthur was the governor of Japan, but they actually liked MacArthur. He tried to do right by the people there. He tried to promote them and develop them. And then we turned it over. And, he also understood that we couldn't depose the emperor there and maintain the society. MacArthur was a smart man. He also knew who our real enemies were, and Truman shut him down on some of the things he wanted to do. If you remember, that's when he got fired.
Right.
So
yeah. Well, hey, I do need to be going in a bit, but if I may, wanted to also share a little bit with your viewers about another organization that I chair. If I could plug it, would that be okay?
Go ahead. Absolutely.
Hey, thanks a lot, Greg. And this has been a pleasure, by the way. It's always cool to meet other patriots and freedom fighters from different parts of the country and learn more about what you guys are all doing in the backyard. I'm the local chapter chair and also state chair for the Republican Liberty Caucus of Texas and El Paso as well. And then I am a regional director for the South Central region, which does not go all the way to Alabama. We cover the South Central region is Mississippi, all the way to New Mexico. And I'll share the screen a little bit. Here's our website if anybody wants to check it out. We actually just chartered a RLC of Alabama, and the state chair, I asked my friend John Carroll, who's our membership director, and we're a little bit more formal because we got dues and all that stuff. It's true. We do all that crazy stuff. But anyway, our state chair for the newly founded RLC of Alabama, his name is, I believe, Anson Chauncey, and he lives in Huntsville, Alabama. So you might, connect with him, and maybe you guys could collaborate on projects with the Restoration Foundation and the newly chartered RLC Alabama. What we're all about is our core values. So it's our core values are promoting individual liberty, such as the Bill of Rights, limited government. Our Constitution is very important to limit government to the rule of law. and free market enterprise. And so those are our three core values that we try to unite under. Ron Paul, a long time ago, was the first president of RLC when we founded it. And the RLC is a recognized coalition club in Texas and in other states as well. We're not exactly like there's other clubs of the Republican Party, like there's a young Republican club in a lot of states, or there's a college Republican club or the women's Republican clubs. Our organization does not always align itself 100% with our state Republican parties. We're a little bit more independent and because we're more concerned about our core principles rather than always going by the party line. So we sometimes challenge our respective state Republican parties on certain issues because if they do not align with our core principles, then our core principles are our compass. And so we have chapters. We train people on how to lobby their their local and state governments. And at the national level, we put out an index every year of senators and congressmen based off of 20 key votes. So if they go to their website, they can see that who got a 100 on our Liberty Index. But really, any person that gets over 90 on our Liberty Index, we highly recommend, and that's why we're with the Republican Party. And we're going to have our national convention coming up in Memphis, Tennessee, and I'll be there July 12th through 15th at Freedom Fest, which is where a lot of freedom-minded liberty activists from all over the country attend. This is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, freedom convention in the country. There's a lot more energy and excitement at these conventions than even CPAC, I would say. And RLC will have its national convention on the last day of Freedom Fest. So if anybody would like to convene with other like-minded people, I've always found that I've never met, these are like liberty Republicans, and I've never met one that I could not just get along with right away. So it's a really great network. We just recently chartered New Mexico, and I was super excited to help with that. And New Mexico is a blue state, but I really do think that the RLC strategy is one that could change things in New Mexico. And it's also part of the solution for keeping Texas red, which I'm concerned with because our state is becoming much more metropolitan. And if the Republican Party of Texas does not, broaden its appeal, so I think fusionism is a big part of that solution, where conservatism and libertarianism need to work together effectively to keep the left at bay and to restore the republic. And I think conservatives and libertarians used to be a lot more at odds in the Ron Paul years, but now I'm seeing that there's a lot that we have in common, and people realize that. So I think the gap has closened and is not as far apart as it once was. And so it's necessary for freedom-loving Americans to, have vigorous debates about where we disagree, but we need to be able to unite on the core values and core principles in order to keep our nation free. So just wanted to talk a little bit about RLC, and thanks for letting me do that.
Yeah, very good. So that Freedom Conference, that sounds pretty interesting. I don't know if I can get to that, but it'd be a definitely good place to promote the Freedom Restoration Foundation. So
definitely check it out and bring business cards and pamphlets and talk to people about it. And if you're all about building the freedom community, that's what they've been doing at Freedom Fest for the last 10 years, is building the community. They promote those gold backs and a lot of other innovative ideas to get independent off the Fed. They're always promoting all kinds of things like gold backs or Bitcoin or all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, I want
to
give a shout out to a comment, but I also want to give a shout out to Oppenheimer Ranch Project. He's got a good channel in here, and he's actually building a earthship house. But Green Country Agriculture, Jason Avers, he said It's easy to tell if something is not a right if it requires that another person be compelled by force to do something against their will. It cannot be a right. It's not right either. And he points out that is slavery. Well, that's what they're trying to put down our throat. But a lot of these people think they're doing it for good reason. They've been hornswoggled to thinking this is what we got to do, and they don't understand what real solutions can be. Green Country Agroforestry has a lot of good real solutions. And, like his channel starts the green, mine starts the green, but we believe in freedom.
Yeah. There you go.
So
Thomas Massey in Congress is an MIT grad, and his wife is as well. So they have a solid grounding in physics and the sciences and engineering. They have I don't know if it's an Earthship or a green, whatever, but they have a self-reliant home that they live in Kentucky. And Thomas Massey often brags that he has the lowest carbon footprint of anyone in Congress. But he's just completely opposed to using laws to force other people to live as he does.
Amen.
Like, yeah.
I've got the greenest concept of them all in my universal habitat, which I featured in a couple of videos that New Day's always shared here, like the Great Fix video. I believe in self-reliance. I believe, and that's what a homestead is. Homestead's heading that direction.
Yeah.
In all of them, they're all good, better than a lot of other things. I also tell people they need to grow their own food, especially when you consider all the junk you're getting out of the stores. So you can check out my links to on my, at least the videos that I post instead of going live on. I don't always post all this stuff on the live videos, but I've got links to True Leaf Market and also to Eden Brothers for seeds. You can get heirloom seeds. So if you get them through them, that'll help my channel. And I want to thank you for coming here, James. It's been a lot of fun. You're very informative. You're a patriot. You believe in what you're doing, and you're trying to make a better change. You're putting it in out of your own time and effort because you want to see a better country. A lot of people fail to see what that really means and why people do the things they do. But you have a clear way of thinking. You use logic. So I salute you for all that. And I want to thank you. Hey, that was a good salute, by the way. You part of yeah, I have. So
background.
I want to thank all the people who came in here and gave us super chats tonight. I want to thank the mods. Looks like the chat room stayed pretty clean. Nobody's coming here with a bunch of mess today. And I think we really have to apply those moral principles and cannot compromise them. You're right, Jason. There's often compromise between food and poison is death, says Vicky Savage. Well, that's what you get out of the supermarket, guys. The same people that want to tell you what kind of society to live in and don't do this and do that, they're the same people that don't want to label certain things on your food, like if it's got phosphates, if it's been genetically altered, they don't want to put that on there. So and actually genetic modification isn't the worst thing. It's what comes with it. It's when they modify it so they can spray all these chemicals on it. And it's the chemicals that's the worst part. Usually,
I just say get rid of the USDA, get rid of the FDA, let people innovate. We could create private, for-profit, non-profit agencies that rate food so that consumers can go to find the rating age. If the rating agency says that this food is good, consumers should feel welcome to trust that the food is good, because it is good to vet food. And if rating agency A leads you down the wrong path and you buy some chicken that rating agency A said was good and you got a stomach ache from that chicken, well, then, rating agency B has a incentive to point out that rating agency A screwed up. And so now people should follow rating agency B for recommendations instead of A. And consumers can, we don't need the FDA or the USDA to do
We can do it all through private enterprise and good organizations that care about our country.
Yeah.
And I think when people say America are bad, they forget who America is. America isn't the elite that run the country. It's you and me and your sister and brother. It's your nephew, your niece. It's your neighbor. That's who America is. We lose sight of what America is. And then we want to throw all this mess out there and paint this country like it's the worst place that ever existed. You know, I say that's a bunch of boulder dash, as Colonel Potter, I believe, used to say on MASH, to use
good.
right terminology. Yeah, and Vicky says, my home opinion, we ought to get rid of all the alphabet agencies. There you go, especially them 3-letter ones. All these regulatory,
There you go.
what they accomplish for us. They don't buy us any safety. There was revolving doors between them and the regulators and regulatees. And so it becomes yeah, they're just spending our tax money, guys, and they're not helping us. So, all right. Hey, James, once again, thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Appreciate you being here. Appreciate all the information you brought to us and what you're trying to accomplish there in El Paso. And the word out to the rest of you is keep an eye on your city councils. Keep an eye on what's cooking there. We need, in your community, we need at least somebody that's got an ear to what's happening so we can be aware of these kind of things as they pop up. Laura Reed, teach people to make and raise their own with no questions or regulations. And amen. And that's why this channel started out with a bunch of videos on gardening, worm farming. So I want to thank everybody for being here. I want to thank all you here that attended and watched. And once again, James, thank you. So with that, I think we're going to go. You got a final word, James? Final thought?
No, just stay local. Politics is local, and it's a lot to do with relationships. So get to know your neighbors.
That's it. Buy local, support your local artist and your local farmer, and grow your own. All right, folks.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for watching. And with that, I'm going to say, Greg out.